Hi, you're listening to the Content Sells Podcast, the show all about how to create content that attracts, converts, and keeps your ideal clients. Welcome to episode 276. I'm Suzi Dafnis. I'm here with my co-host, Michelle Falzon. Hey, Michelle, how are you?
Hey, Suzi, I am doing really well. It's great to be here. And I'm keen on today's topic because we're talking about something every business owner faces, which is objections and how to handle those. You know, those moments when a potential buyer says, I'd love to, but, I'd love to, but now's not the right time. I just can't afford it right now. I have to check with my partner. And you can almost feel the energy drop in the conversation when they say it. And for a lot of people, that's where the sale dies. They freeze, they hear those objections and they kind of move on or try to bulldoze past them. But what we want to unpack today is that every objection actually contains a buying clue. It is not where the sale needs to go to die. It's the very thing that can create the sale if you know how to flip those objections around.
Yeah, and I know this episode is going to be useful to so many business owners because you're absolutely right. We hear those same objections over and over. And you and I talk about this a lot. Objections are not the enemy. They might feel like it at the moment and cause us to shrink a little bit. They are or can be an invitation to go deeper. Because if someone's even raising an objection, it means that often they're actually considering the decision. They're leaning in and they might feel conflicted. Can I really afford this? Am I ready for this? But often they want your help to overcome these objections, to get clarity, to make a decision. And hopefully it's clearing that way for them to buy. And in many cases, they're also testing to see how you're going to respond, if they can trust you, if you understand them, if you have their best interests in mind. And that's your turning moment. That's the point where you can turn resistance into desire for what you have on offer.
Yeah, I love that idea of turning resistance into desire. And that's what this episode is all about, transforming objections. And we do that by transforming the objection into a benefit. So taking that frown and turning it upside down. And we're going to show you how to take the very thing people resist, time, money, doubt, fear, and flip it so it becomes the reason they buy, the benefit to them. And if you've listened to this show for a while, you will know we like to make each episode super practical. So today you're going to walk away with a very simple but powerful objection flipping framework. How do we do this? How do we turn those objections around? And also how you can apply this framework to 3 universal objections that I guarantee all of us have faced at one point or another in our businesses, and how to use this framework to flip each one. And most importantly, how to not just address an objection, but actually honor that objection and resolve it so someone can move forward and buy from you easily and naturally.
And picking up on that point about not just addressing an objection, you really need to resolve it. You need to sit with it and explore it and then help people see beyond it so that they shift the lens through which they view your offer. So it becomes the solution that they've been seeking, that they've been looking for. And that means staying in the conversation about the objection long enough for the person to feel safe and convinced. Because when you do that, the objection becomes a positive. It can become a reason to act now.
Yeah, that's such a key, isn't it? Staying in the conversation about that objection, even if we want to run away from it. I love that piece of advice. So if you've ever felt that sinking feeling when someone says, I'm not sure I can afford it, or any other objection that you typically hear, stick around because by the end of this episode, we're hoping you'll see objections in a different light, one where you can flip the objection to become one of your most powerful conversion tools. Even if right now you might be rolling your eyes a little bit at that statement and you might think that's a bit counterintuitive, because the tendency can be to want to skim over objections, to divert and look the other way like, no, if I don't look, maybe it isn't real, right? Because won't talking about the reasons someone doesn't want to buy actually hurt the sale? That can be the thinking, right? But the answer is no. You can't avoid the objections. They're there in that person's mind. So instead, we're hoping you'll feel great when someone presents you with an objection, because you'll know how to face that objection head on and turn that hesitation into a heck yeah.
Yeah, so let's start right there with the mindset shift that changes everything. Most people hear an objection, and as you said, they think, oh, they're saying no, and we retreat or we push forward, or we just get uncomfortable. But what if you heard it as a signal instead? Because when someone raises an objection, they're not rejecting you, they're not saying no you, they're revealing what matters most to them. And an objection is really just information about their fears, their priorities, their decision making process, their autonomy, their confidence, so many things. It's like a compass pointing out what they really care about. So if they say, I don't have time, that tells you that time freedom is important, and they're likely already making some decisions about how they spend their time that is constricting that freedom, that's taking the time that I want actually away from them. And if they say, I need to think about it, maybe they're looking for safety or reassurance. If they say, I'm not sure I can afford it or I can't afford it, they're simply letting you know that they haven't seen the value yet. So when we treat objections this way, we can use them to build trust instead of having them trigger our defense. And it's the difference between arguing with someone's fear and actually being with it and understanding it.
Yeah. And when you can be with people and be with their fear and understand their fear, that's when they move closer to you. And I know we both see this a lot with business owners. They either try to talk people out of the objection too fast, or they go the other way and just shrink to say anything at all. That first sort of objection or piece of feedback that says, well, maybe it's not a heck yeah right out of the gate, can be enough to tipple us off our confidence pedestal, and we start to just think, oh, well, this sale's lost to me. And it's such a missed opportunity. And here's where most people short circuit the sale. They hit an objection and they retreat, or they try to slap a superficial statement on it and move on. But objections are layered, like what you were saying, Susie. It's, all those different feelings and what's going on for them. It's a layered cake. So how do you stay in the conversation around objections when, especially to start with, your mind might be screaming at you, get the heck out of here and fast? Well, we're hoping this simple 5-step objection flipping framework will help. And it goes like this. We'll just give you a quick overview of it and dig into some examples for each of these steps. When someone presents you with an objection, the first step of the objection flipping framework is step 1, clarify. And this is where you just want to say things like, and this is just such a good set of phrases to have in your mind when somebody says, I can't afford this. Tell me more about that. Or what feels like the biggest block right now? Or tell me what feels hardest about this for you. Just open-ended questions that are really seeking to understand. This will tell you so much about what's holding someone back. Often all you will need to help them flip this objection is said right here at this step. Your goal here is to open the door and let the real objection emerge, because we'll say all these things like, I can't afford it, but there's likely so much under it. It's also where the buyer stops feeling like they're being sold to, and they start feeling safe enough. When you do this well, when you just open the door on that, they feel safe enough to tell you the truth, to give you more information. So that's step 1, clarify. And then you want to move into the second part of the flipping of the objections, and that's step 2, normalize and name. So you've listened to what they've said. So they've started to share with you what's under the hood of this objection, what their fear is about whether they can afford this, or whether they have time for this, or whether they're ready for this. And you want to normalize that. That's the first thing here in this second step. Normalize and name. So first off, help people feel okay about having this concern. Show them they're not the only one. This isn't a personal flaw or a problem. You can say things like, that makes total sense, or you're not the only one who's told me that, or this comes up very often, especially for people who are just getting started. These are kind of normalizing phrases. Now the person you're talking to is feeling seen and heard, and you also are beginning to understand what's really driving them. And this is where you also want to name what it is they're concerned about in a way that provides insight for them. So we're normalizing it. Oh, that makes total sense. I can really see why you feel that way. And then you start to name it. You start to repeat back to them what you heard them say in a way that gives them some insight. For example, when someone says that, it's usually because they're worried about XYZ. So you start to show you understand, and you start to name the things that they've been telling you. And people are rarely aware of their true objection. And by helping them name it, you are already helping them to get past it. It's kind of an amazing thing to see in action. Because when people name their fear out loud or their concern out loud, they're halfway through moving through it. You know, you could say something like that comes up a lot, especially for people who've tried other programs and didn't get what they hoped for. If somebody had been talking to you about, oh, well, I did this program and I did this and I've spent money there, and, you know, they start to say those things, you can simply name it. Hey, I get it. This happens especially for people who've tried other programs and didn't get what they hoped for. You're naming it. Or here's another example. Totally get it. High achievers often say that. They've built their success on juggling everything and it's exhausting. So you can imagine somebody's told you a bunch of things about all the things they've got on right now, and you just concisely bring that together and name it. Or here's another one. Yeah, that's familiar, especially for people who've been stuck in reactive mode and can't remember the last time they had the space to breathe. You can see how somebody has shared their heart with you about all the things that they're having to deal with and what's in their mental load and how they just feel behind on everything, and you can name it. Yeah, it looks like you've been stuck in reactive mode, and that's so familiar. This happens all the time, especially if you can't remember the last time you had space to breathe. So the moment you name that fear, you're not just handling an objection, you're really doing what we're talking about earlier. You're honoring that identity that's underneath the objection. And this is the point where you will see people literally exhale because they feel seen and not sold to.
So good. So you've got step 1 and 2, and this moves us into the third step of this objection flip framework. And step 3 is to reframe. And I'll explain what that means. So to reframe something, it's not a rebuttal. It's not about proving them wrong, invalidating what they've said or what they're feeling. It's about helping them see something differently, like putting it into a new frame. If you imagine a picture, you put a new frame in it, it looks totally different. So it's about helping them see it differently in a way that feels safer, truer, more empowering. So if step 1 and 2 surfaced the fear and then named the pattern, the step 3 reframe anchors in the benefit. It says, what you thought was a problem might actually be your path. What if the thing that feels like your barrier is actually your bridge to the place that you want to go? So you're shifting them from a frame of pain to a frame of possibility. You're guiding their brain to stop asking, why can't I do this? And to start asking, this is the reframe, what if I could do this? And the reframe works because it disrupts the internal loop that they're stuck in their head or in their habits. And their current thinking creates emotional safety through avoidance. The reframe offers safety in a different way. It offers safety through this new lens of truth, a truth that feels both credible and hopeful. And this, in an ideal world, is what unlocks action. I'm going to give you a couple more phrases. What if the very thing you're afraid of is the reason you need this? What if that red flag is actually a sign that you're ready? Are you feeling nervous? That actually means you're on the edge of a breakthrough, not a breakdown. That's one we have used many times because it's true. You know, when women come into our world and they're trying to do one of our higher level programs, they're nervous, but it's just because they're right on the edge. You don't need to feel 100% ready. You need to feel 10% willing. Okay, I might not feel 100% ready, but am I willing? Is there 10% of me that feels like I'd want to lean in? Another phrase is, you think you can't afford it, but what is it already costing you to stay stuck? Or if I said that a different way, I would say, you're saying that you can't afford it, because I don't want to invalidate what they're thinking. You're saying that you can't afford it, or you feel like you can't afford it, but what is it already costing you to stay stuck? That's step number 3. Step number 4, so step number 3 was reframe. Step number 4 is prove. So now that the fear is surfaced, right, we've identified it, we've clarified it, we're now reframing it. Now you give them evidence, not just logic, but emotionally matched proof. But here's the issue. Most people try to prove the wrong thing here. You don't shift to proving that you can help them. You don't say things like, we've helped thousands of clients, or our quality control ensures that you always get delivery on time. Because the prospect buyer isn't asking, is this good? They're asking, is this going to work for me? So instead, you need to provide proof that helps them see themselves in someone else's success. For example, let me share what happened for someone who started right where you are. So Monique, I'm giving you an example here, was juggling 3 kids, part-time work, and caregiving for her mum. And she told us she almost didn't sign up because she thought she just wouldn't have time. Using our system, we helped her get a whole week's worth of marketing done in just 2 focused hours a week, and she doubled her client base in 6 weeks. Pretty cool, right? Or Jen told us she'd already spent $12,000 on courses and she felt like she had nothing to show for it. She was scared that this would come to be more of the same. But in week 3, she made back her investment by landing a retainer client using just one of the scripts we gave her. Or, I'll give you one more. Chloe almost said no, not because she didn't want to, but because she didn't think her partner would get it, that they'd be on board. We gave her a 3-minute summary and a cost-benefit breakdown. Her partner actually encouraged her to go for it. And 2 months later, they celebrated their first $5,000 client together. Okay, so I'm not trying to prove that I'm the best person, I have so much experience, I've helped thousands of people. I'm letting them see it through the eyes of someone like them. So, great. Michelle?
I love it. I love it. And I hope what people are hearing there in those examples you just shared is how Suzi was not backing away from the objection. You know, like, oh, I get it. You spent money on programs before, or you're worried you've got the time. Oh, let me tell you about Monique. She was worried she didn't have the time. She had 3 kids. She was juggling. You know, like it's suddenly all the sting comes out of the objection and you head onto the same side of the table as the person you're talking to. And this is a really important part because sales, it's not about forcing someone to bend to your will. It's about helping someone. And this is the way to do it. So I love what you did there. You're giving, and you sort of model for everybody, Suzi, this idea of giving people evidence, this prove step, of someone like them with a similar problem or concern or situation to them succeeding anyway. Like in spite of this problem that you've got right now that you're perceiving, other people with this same issue have been able to succeed by using my product or my service. And that's the proof you're looking for here in this step. You sort of insert the product or service or the thing you do as evidence, but it's in the context of someone else just like them who's had that problem. And I love what you did there, Suzi, because you said like they used our script. Like you shared something specific that you give in the program or in the course or in the product that you deliver on that was the thing that helped that person with the very same problem or objection that the person you're talking to right now has. And that is the prove step. And then it's time to move on to the final step in the objection flipping framework. And this is step 5, realign. And this is where we start to say things that just realign somebody back into the decision that we're hoping they will make, back into the steps forward. So does that feel closer to what you need? Now that we've talked this through, you know, you're worried about time. Does that feel now like moving forward in this coaching program is closer to what you need? Or could this now, you know, can you now see that this is really the right next step? Or some question that helps them re-examine the offer that you've put in front of them in light of how you've just sat with and handled and reframed and proved and normalized and named and done all the things, that particular concern or objection that they had. And in this step, you're really returning the power to your prospective buyer. You're not closing the sale and trying to like force something. You're really opening a question where you're inviting a new decision from a more grounded place, from a place where they feel, oh, okay, that's really resolved that concern. So your goal here at this realign step is to check in, not to pressure, to have someone feel safe saying yes or no, because, you know, that's what we want to get to. We want to get to the outcome. Is this the right thing for you? And this works because most buyers do not want to be sold to, but they do want to feel heard. They do want to feel respected. They do want clarity from you. You're helping them to get clear. They do want to see that there's a way to get to the other side of the concerns they have and actually get the result they want. Because to the point Suzi made earlier, objections aren't blocks, they're bridges. And when you can walk someone across their real fear, the thing that was maybe underlying that, oh, I don't think I can afford this, you don't just win the sale, you help them make a new decision about who they are and what's possible for them.
I am so keen to see you put this 5-part objection flipping framework into work and letting us know how you go. I'm going to recap the steps that we've just walked you through. So step 1 is to clarify, really surface what the real concern is. So an example of a way to surface that could be asking or saying, tell me what feels hardest about this for you. Step number 2 is to normalize and name it. Like really make it real. So letting people know how they're feeling is really normal and naming what's really going on under that surface. And that would be with saying something like, when someone says that, it's usually because they're worried about ABC, whatever that is. Step number 3 is reframe. So really anchoring what's happening back to the benefit and saying something like, which is exactly what this program is designed to fix. Step number 4 is to prove, and it's to prove it in their context. So short, specific stories or examples related to someone else with the same objection who succeed in using your product or service. And before we go today, I'll give you a clue on how you could be capturing those stories so that you have them on hand. So that's prove. Step number 5 is realign. So realign the decision. Does that feel closer to what you need? They're the 5 steps, and we'll outline these also on our show notes page. The other thing we're going to do, because you heard us say some incredible, both Michelle and I share some really incredible phrases that you can actually just pick up and use in your own context. So what we're going to do is we're going to put those details over on the show notes page, and we'll give you the details of where you can find those in a moment. But we thought that would be a really useful gift for you to be able to go back and reference those, when you need them.
Yeah, because sometimes just being able to have that sentence that gets you started, into the conversation is all you need to get, the door open on resolving more objections more confidently. So now what we want to do again to help you feel more confident, to feel more capable when you're in these conversations or you're addressing these objections in copy that you might be writing, or you're on a webinar and you're at the Q&A portion and people are sort of firing off these kinds of objections. We want to give you some examples of how to use the framework for some of the most common types of objections. And while there are lots of different objections, we've chosen 3. Just in the interest of time, we could talk about this all day. And the 3 objections that we're going to look at are when somebody says to you, I don't have time. How do you apply this framework in a few different scenarios? The second objection is, I can't afford it. And the third objection is, I'm not sure this is right for me. So we're going to dig into those. Now, of course, like I said, there are many more, but once you know this framework and you've got these examples, we're hoping you can map this approach to any type of objection that you get from your market. So let's start with the first of these, where somebody says to you, I don't have time for this. So how might this framework that we've just taken you through, these 5 steps, look? So let's look at step number 1, which remember was to clarify. And we're opening with just nice open-ended questions. And we're feeling okay about it, that they've raised an objection. You don't need to run away from this. In fact, when you get to do this well, you can go, oh, this is great. I can dig into this with them. So here's what step 1, clarify, might look like. Tell me more about that. Is it that you're already maxed out, or that it's hard to know what to prioritize right now? What's going on in terms of, the way you're spending your time right now? Now, somebody might respond to you and say, oh, my life just feels like there's no space. I had this conversation with someone today, Suzi. She was like, I just feel like life's getting busier and busier and everything's wall to wall. I have no spare time. between work and the kids and trying to stay on top of everything. This just feels like it would be one more thing. And, let people say all the things they want to say at that point. It's very often they want to share what the heck is going on. And so let them talk. And then at a certain point, it's going to feel like the right moment to move on to step 2, which is normalize and name. So somebody's just given you the download of how busy their life is in this particular scenario. Now you want to normalize and name. Hey, that makes total sense. I hear that all the time, especially from people who are juggling a lot and who've been operating in reactive mode for months, sometimes even years, because that's what she just told me. When someone says that they're short on time, it's usually because they're not just short on time, they're actually short on bandwidth. And they're afraid of that bandwidth just tipping over and they burn out or they can't do any of the things that they've got on their plate. So here we normalized, hey, that makes total sense, especially from people who are juggling a lot, but we named it. And here's the important piece. It's not just that they're short on time, or it's not just that you're short on time potentially. It sounds like you're really short on bandwidth. Now you're starting to move the conversation in a really interesting direction and you're providing a bit of insight. Somebody goes, yeah, really, it is my bandwidth. Or, what I was saying to the person today was talking about mental load. So now you're ready to move into step 3, reframe, because they'll respond to that and go, yeah, that's right. I kind of feel like I don't have any more bandwidth. That's it exactly. Now you're starting to, they really do see that you get them. So we can move on to step 3, reframe. Remember, this is for somebody saying, I don't have the time. What if this isn't something that adds to your plate? What if this isn't something that clogs up your bandwidth? What if it's the thing that finally gives you space to really get the bandwidth you need to focus on the things you really want to get done? Because what I find is you don't actually need more time. We've all got the same amount of time. We actually need a system to stop the time leaks. So you see how I'm reframing it there? What if the thing that feels like the block right now could actually be the bridge? How might this be turned into a benefit? Now they're curious. I'd like more bandwidth. I'd like to free up the bandwidth that I have. And you're starting to head their minds into thinking about, well, maybe, yeah, she's right. Everybody's got the same amount of time. I just need a system that stops the time leaks, or I need a way to get back some of that time. And now we can move into step 4, prove. Monique felt the same way. She was juggling 3 kids, the things Suzi was saying, part-time work, maybe she was caregiving, and she nearly didn't join because she was thinking the same thing, I don't have the time, my bandwidth is already full. And like Suzi said, you might speak then to how you created a system for her or gave her your system that helped her to take what she was doing in a week and get it done in a day. And what that meant was in just a few weeks, she was able to double her client base. And here's where you would say something like, not because she did more, but because she finally focused on the right things. Because that's what I'm imagining in this imaginary scenario that the solution that I would be providing does. I'm helping people to focus on this part of their marketing, not that. Or I'm helping people look at how to develop their HR strategy like this instead of like that. And now, I'll go for it. Yeah.
Sorry, no, go ahead.
And then step 5, the final piece is to realign. And of course, all along the way here, they're engaging with you. We're just trying to fast track the beats of this conversation. But somebody might say, wow, I get that, right? I feel like I'm focused on a lot of things that aren't necessarily the right things. And maybe that is what's taking all my time and attention. I really would like to know what the right things were. And so now we get into some realignment. So given what we've just said, does that feel closer to what you need? Something that helps you simplify and not stretch even further?
What I was going to say, Michelle, is that I hope as your listening listener that you can see how this framework is really meeting someone right where they are, like it's giving them space to express what's really going on. And then you're very purposefully helping them move through it, using the 5 steps. So We've just covered time and walked you through the 5 steps that would help you with the objection around time. Let's look how we can apply this objection flipping framework to the I can't afford it objection, which again, most of us business owners have had people say at some point. At least if we're charging what we really should be. We have had that. So step 1 in this instance is to clarify. So we're going to revisit step 1, and what you might say is, can I ask, is it the upfront cost that's the biggest concern, or is it more about whether the return is really worth it? And they might say, it's just a big leap. I've never invested this much before, or I've invested before. Honestly, I didn't get what I paid for. So we've clarified what the objection is. Then we go into step 2, which is normalize and name. And you might say that is a valid concern. And we hear it all the time. When someone says that, it's often because they're not just worried about money, they're scared of making the wrong call again and feeling that sting of regret. So now I'm not saying anything other than validating and also saying you're not the only one and naming it. Step 3 is reframe. And that would go something like this. And here's something for you to consider. What if this isn't a cost, but the thing that stops you leaking time, going back to the example Michelle said, energy and opportunity month after month? What if the real expense is staying stuck? What if the real expense is 12 months from now, you're still in the same position? Now we move into step 4, which is prove. And it could be something like Jen. We mentioned Jen earlier. When we first met Jen, she'd spent $12,000 in other programs, and she told us she had really not much to show for it. She was understandably super cautious about investing again. But by week 3 in our program, she'd landed a retainer client using just one of our plug and play scripts, as we said earlier. And she made her investment back already. She went on to get 3 new clients before the end of the program, and she said that the confidence boost that gave her was incredible. So now we've proven, use an example that they can relate to. We move into step 5, which is realign. And that might sound something like this. What would change if you trusted yourself to make a smarter investment this time with more support, more structure, and more return?
These examples are so good. I love just kind of hearing the way the conversation could go. And, you know, at each one of those points that Suzi was just pointing out, of course, the person you're talking to is going to relate. They're going to add things. They're going to interject. And so it'll be like playing jazz. But this is the general framework. And, you know, this one, I can't afford it. It derails a lot of business owners because it kind of sounds so final until you know this framework. Where do you go with something like that? Well, no, surely you can afford it. You can find the money from somewhere. But price objections are rarely about money. They're very often about risk and regret. And you want to scratch the surface with that first clarify question to dig into that. I've bought things like this before and I didn't finish them, and I feel like, you know, embarrassed about that, or I feel regret over spending that money and not capitalizing on it. I know it was my own fault, but I didn't do it, you know. Or what if I invest and I don't get the result? Or I've got a lot of commitments right now and I'm not sure how to make this work. You just start to understand what's really going on under that. So let's apply the framework now to the third of the 3 objections we're going to cover today. And I hope you're just starting to think about the objections you're getting and how the framework might work for them. So this one is, I'm not sure this will work for me. And we might hear this in different ways, like, oh, I'm not sure if I'm ready for this, or this looks like it's for more advanced people, or, you know, I was never very good at copywriting, or, you know, any phrase. People aren't always going to necessarily come out and say, I'm not sure this will work for me, but the gist of what they're saying is that. And so anytime you hear anything that's suggesting, but I only went to high school, I didn't do a degree, or but I live in the country, or but I, you know, I'm not very good at maths, or but I've only been doing this for 2 years, or whatever it is, they're really saying, I'm not sure this will work for me. So step 1, what do we do? In step 1, we clarify. Say more about that. What part of this makes you feel unsure? Is it the content, the format, the other participants, how long it takes, or are you just wondering if your situation's too unique for this? So have a think about what's kind of going on there. Just when you dig into that, what do you feel? And they might say, well, I was watching your webinar and I saw the stories of the people who've done this, but everyone just seemed a bit further along than me. I'm still figuring out my niche. I don't have an email list yet. And honestly, I've been spinning my wheels for months. I'm just not sure if I'm ready for something like this. Now they've told you so many more things. And here we get to do step 2, which is normalize and name. Oh my gosh, I totally get it. You're not alone. Actually, a lot of people we work with have felt exactly the same way at the start. You're still figuring a whole bunch of things out. And here's what we've found. When someone's unsure if they're ready, it's usually because they've spent so long gathering information, and that is starting to feel like the biggest risk of all, right? That hesitation is super common, especially among smart people who've been trying to figure out all of this on their own, and they've got mountains of information, and now they're kind of a bit perplexed about what is the right direction to go in. Usually when someone says this, it's because they want to get it right, and they are tired of spinning their wheels, and it can feel risky to just double down on one option when you've done some research to have 20 different options. So now they're thinking, yeah, right, I've done that. I've just spent a month. I've got 20 different options. I really am not sure which way to go. And I don't know, should I be doing option A, option B, option C, option D? They can see they've suddenly painted themselves in a corner, and you're offering some clarity. Now, step 3, the reframe. What if the fact that you've been researching and learning and trying to figure it all out on your own is actually the reason you're ready right now? You see that reframe there? What if you're not actually behind? You're just overwhelmed from trying to make decisions in the dark. And what if you don't need to be perfectly ready? You just need the right structure to take all this initial learning you've done and put it into a plan, into a direction, into some momentum. And we're shifting their thinking here from this might not work for me to actually this might finally be the thing that does work for me. We're shifting from pain to possibility. And that's the purpose of this reframe, not to push, but to create the space for possibility. So now they've told you they're not sure it's going to work for you in one way or another. You've gone through and clarified what that means. You've normalized and named that and got a bit more specific about it. You've reframed that maybe this really is for them. Maybe this finally is the thing that's going to work for me. And now we move into step 4, prove. Let me talk to you about Sam. When he came in, he wasn't ready either. He had no niche, no list, a ton of half-finished ideas. He told us he'd been researching for months because he was terrified of choosing the wrong thing and wasting even more time. And we started him with our 30-day clarity map, one small decision at a time. 2 weeks later, he launched his first lead magnet. A month after that, he had his first 200 subscribers and a clear path forward. And he said to me just recently, I realized I wasn't unready, I was unsupported. And this gave me the support I needed to get going. So you're proving here that someone like them in their same situation at their same stage of development achieved a result because of your process. And that's what you want to do here at step 4. And now where do we go? We realign. Step 5. Here is where you bring it back to them, not by closing hard, not by forcing anything, but by giving the person you're talking to agency to check in and see if this is now in alignment, if you really have resolved that objection for them. And this is the softest, most respectful part of the framework, and also the most powerful, because buyers want clarity, not pressure. So here's how you might close the loop here. So hearing Sam's story and the things we've been talking about, does this feel a little closer to what you've been looking for? Oh my gosh, yeah, I can so relate to what Sam said. Or you might say, does the idea of starting with structure, not speed, feel more doable? Or do you feel like this meets where you are instead of expecting you to be further along?
This is bringing them right back into alignment, Michelle, and it's inviting them to make a decision. It doesn't demand a decision, and I think that's what really makes it work. you flip that objection into a chance for them to be more aligned, to have more interest, to have more momentum in the direction of what it is that you offer. And it all started because you leaned into the objection instead of trying to gloss over it or negate it. Did you want to say something about that?
Well, look, I think this is where objections really, this reframe we're asking all our listeners to buy into today is where objections stop being roadblocks and they become bridges, Every time you get an objection, this is a learned skill, I want to say.
Yes.
I used to feel when somebody said, "Oh, I can't afford it," I would feel the tense up inside and all those things. And now I feel great. When somebody says I can't afford it, I go, "Oh, here's an opportunity to help them. Here's an opportunity to clarify and dig under the surface and see what's really going on here and to reframe." And I think for all of us, if we believe we've got a great product or service, we need to be creating bridges where our clients or our prospective clients currently have blocks. If you really can help someone, it's your job to help them get past these objections so you really can help them. So when you clarify, when you normalize, when you reframe, when you prove and then realign the decision, you're not just helping someone say yes to you. You're really helping them say yes to the version of themselves they've been trying to become. They have a problem. They want a solution. So when you can meet objections with empathy, with certainty, they stop being walls. They become pathways for your clients to get what they want and for you to get those people as your customers.
Yeah, it's hugely empowering. And there it is. That's us talking about how to transform objections into benefits and giving you some practical techniques that turn hesitation into a yes, and all that done using the objection flipping framework. And so we've given you some ways to start using it, and so that you'll get those same objections, but now you have some tools for that. We're also, as we mentioned, we're going to make these phrases that make it more easy for you to just copy and paste into your own world. We're going to make those available for you over on our show notes page. Now, of course, you may have other objections that are specific to your business or your industry. So take some time to think about what those objections are and how might you apply this framework to those objections, and start practicing. You might not get it perfect right out the gate, but the more you do this, the better you will get. I wanted to just add one thing with the prove step, where we're telling those stories of people that we've worked with and the transformation they've had. The first step is to have those stories and to have them on tap and to know them really well. And before we go today, we want to give you a resource that can make that step just a little easier for you.
I love a good resource. Yeah, it is amazing what happens when you start leaning into those objections. The response that you usually get is actually very encouraging. Like once you actually open the door and tell me more about that, is the time issue because of this? Or they want to tell you, and they will very rarely find someone who's ready to hold that space with them, to hold that conversation with them. So what happens is if you can just trust and start practicing like Suzi was suggesting, then my guess is that you're going to feel like doing it more and you will get better each time.
I can't wait. And I'm sure you can't wait to hear how you go using this framework. So do circle back and let us know if you used it and how it went. And in a moment, I'm going to share the link to the show notes where you will find the phrases that we've used today. You'll find a summary of today's episode. You'll find links to other episodes that might be relevant or that we've mentioned in today's show. So stay tuned for that link. Before we go to that, we love doing this show for you. We love sharing these ideas with as many people as possible. And we have over 100 5-star reviews for the show right now. So I want to thank you for listening, whether this is your first time or your 276th time listening to the show. We would so appreciate it if you would leave us a rating or a review on Apple Podcasts. And one person that did reach out and they did leave a review goes by the handle DC Indigo. So it's a 5-star review, and DC Indigo is in Australia. And the review says, Always great content. Suzi and Michelle unpack marketing principles in such a relatable way. So much gold and conveyed with honesty and a passion for sharing genuine information that truly helps. I really loved the latest episode on how to use bonuses to overcome objections and make more sales. Can't wait to try it in my own business. Thank you. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to leave the review. And for those of you listening, go, oh, what is that episode about how to use bonuses to overcome objections and make more sales? We will put a link to that in the show notes for you. So again, thank you if you enjoyed this episode or any episode of the show. We would appreciate you giving us a shout out on wherever you're listening, leaving us a rating or review. Now, I mentioned that we are going to put things we've referenced today, the phrases that'll be so useful for you to use. We're going to put them over on our show notes page, which is at herbusiness.com/flip objections. FLIP objections, all one word. The other thing I mentioned was that we have a resource for you if you want to have your stories, your proof on tap. Just an episode or a couple of episodes ago, I forget which it is now, Michelle, we did a whole episode on the social proof system. This is a simple 3-part system that has you bake in the capturing, the creating and the publishing of your social proof, baking that into your business processes. So it's not just something that you do some of the time, it's something that you're doing all of the time. We tell you what the opportune moments are to ask for that social proof, how to capture it, how to make someone on the team, even if you're the only person responsible for it, so that it happens every time. And we will put a link in the show notes to that episode. Because when you want to be able to tell the story of Jess and Sam and all the people that we mentioned here today, then you'll have your little collection of objection-related stories, right, that you can roll out. And in the beginning, you might only need one for each objection. That's great. But, if you have a few more, the better you'll be at like mapping that objection to the story that you have. That's what I've got, Michelle. Anything you want to say before we go today?
I love it. And just the byproduct of all of this, and I'm assuming that our listeners have picked this up, but what I loved about becoming more ready to just really sit with somebody's objection, not enable it, but to sit with it in a way that I'm ready to understand it so I can reframe it and help them move forward. I just personally found my confidence, my sense of being able to handle almost any situation, my belief in my product went up. And it is such a cool way of looking at the world. People aren't criticizing us. They really just need our help. And I think this sort of reframe that we've talked about today can be very empowering for you as a business owner, even beyond how you handle objections, just the way you are in your business and the confidence you have. And we look forward to hearing how you go with it and have a great time handling objections.
And to Michelle's point, I feel that, if you can become a level of ease around using this process, you'll not feel desperate or anxious or beaten up when someone says no. And it'll allow you to really listen to them and really come from a place of service. And I think that for each of us, yes, we want the sale. Yes, we want someone to stay in our program. And ultimately, I think if we are here to serve them, then this framework is really going to support you in not only, having a real conversation, one that really supports that person, but ultimately it will result in more trust in you, in your authority being raised, in the way that people perceive you being raised, because you're not, there's no rebuttal, a word we used earlier. There's no desperation. There's just an ease about it. And is everyone going to say yes all the time and move forward? No. But this approach is going to have you, as Michelle said, I think ultimately feel more confident and more at ease with the value that you bring, knowing that you have done everything you can to support that person in having clarity and making a decision. I want to thank you so much for listening. I too cannot wait to see and hear how you use this framework. We love doing this show for you. We're so glad that you're here. We'll see you next time right here on the Content Sales Podcast. Bye for now.